I never thought in my whole life that I would ever end up winding up being a rector of a cathedral. That just wasn't a thought that ever occurred in my mind. Even when at 10 years old, I began thinking that maybe God might be calling me to be a priest. Even the many times I found myself here at the cathedral for one of the many beautiful masses that take place here for the diocese, I never thought I might be the steward of such an awesome place, and yet here I am. The most powerful moments for me in cathedrals, I have to tell you, are ordinations. And within those masses, whether deacon or priest or even bishop, there is a powerful moment, and that is just before the laying on of hands by the bishop over the one who is being ordained. While the litany of the saints is being sung, those who are being ordained lay prostrate on the floor of the cathedral in complete submission to God, while all those prayers of the saints are invoked for those who are about to be ordained. I remember my own ordination and really how humbling that moment was when that happened. I prostrated myself to the God who was calling me into his service. Each year, since the day of my ordination, something I have seen happening more and more has been a shift in the expectations of churchgoers. I've seen more and more people have the expectation of getting something out of their worship experience. They've been coming to get something. In other words, going to church is more about what a person gets rather than what they give to God. And when the getting isn't good enough for them, they so often search out other places that they might be able to get more. And I suppose that's what happens in a culture that is driven by consumerism and myriad of entertainment possibilities. We have a lot of expectations when it comes to our own personal time. If we don't like what's on a channel, a TV channel, well, all we have to do is switch it. I did this again last night. You can tell I used to turn knobs on a television, not anymore. And when I don't like a style of music in the car, well, how many hundreds of other satellite channels are there that I can go to? Everything, I think, is geared to be able to give people what they want. The problem is that this attitude also has crept into other places of our lives. And sadly, it also creeps into the area of our worship. There are so many churches now that tailor everything to the people that go there, giving them what they might want. But the problem with that approach is that it is precisely the opposite of what true worship really is. And I think that this Feast of the Epiphany can help us to understand rightly what worship is meant to be. Let's take a look at what happens with the protagonists in today's gospel reading. We hear that Magi had arrived from the east and had come to do homage to this newly born king. We've heard these Magi, also called wise men. In our house, they were the three kings. We've heard these Magi are also people from the east, from the far east. And no matter what name we have used for them, the fact is they were important and high-ranking people in the world. They are the ones to whom adulation would normally be given. They would get it. But instead, they have left the comfort of their nation, the comfort of their homes. They've traveled great distances, and for one purpose, to be able to adore Jesus Christ. How often is it that I will hear people say something like this: you know, Father, I don't need to go to church. I can pray just as easily as at home as I can at church. If we take the example of the Magi, I suppose, well, they could have had the same attitude as well. I wonder if they might have said something like this: it's such a long way to ride on a humpy camel. We can just stay here. We can adore that newborn king from afar. Why take a chance with danger lurking all about on that route? But that's not what they did or said. No, they made their way to the spot where Jesus was. They allowed the star to lead them to the place of adoration. And how can we do anything less? Aside from terrible illness or terrible road conditions, how many excuses must we conjure up before we realize how important it is to go to the place of Christ's real presence at Mass and worship him? Now, in a time of pandemic, some people really do need to be careful, and perhaps they must worship through the live stream. But for those that are not in danger, which quite honestly I think is most of us, a live stream can never ever take the place of worship together here in church. When the Magi do arrive at their destination in Bethlehem, what do? Well, here is how the gospel put it. On entering the house, they saw the child with Mary, his mother. They prostrated themselves and did him homage. They prostrated themselves and did him homage. And that word prostrate comes from the Latin prostratus, which means literally to throw oneself down. Now that's what's required of anyone about to be ordained. It's a position of total submission. These most important of men, whether they be called wise men or kings or magi, they submit themselves bodily in total worship to this little child in front of them. It's a position of humility before God. I wonder if you remember in the 1970s, and I think there's still some churches around that do this, there was a movement not to kneel during the time of the consecration at Mass, and instead they would remain standing. But standing in our own culture is not a sign of submission at all. I think it's a sign of respect. We've seen that if a judge comes in, we all stand. But I think we owe God much more than just respect. We owe God our obedience. We owe God our humble submission. We owe God our worship. It is supposed to be what we give to God, not what we get from him, but what we give to him. When the Magi did prostrate themselves and worshiped the newly born Christ child, they also offered him gifts. As we come once again to worship the Lord, let's give him the best gift of all, and that would be the gift of ourselves. When we come to church, is it still okay to hope that we're going to hear music which inspires us? Well, yes, of course. Is it okay to hope that we can come away with something to ponder from the homily? Well, certainly. But above all, let's hope that this year we will make every effort to seek out the Lord every time we can to worship him. And having found him, let's kneel before him in all humility. As the great Christmas carol rings out, "O come, let us adore him. O come, let us adore him. O come, let us adore him, Christ the Lord."